Another draft physics presentation. Yeah, more interferometer, no doubt. Comments, but not really. I mean, it's all on one subject, and there is stuff to fix, and so there's some things to talk about. So we'll talk about them. I mean, you have to really care about details to watch these videos. I must concede, but and this is all in process. I mean, this idea that somehow I'm talking from some church that's already written. No, you are the ones talking from the church already written, and I'm just pointing out how your church has some places that it's logical in continuity. Yeah, in continents. In the sense, this is like where did Cain's wife come from, kind of thing. Stuff that you just never considered. So anyway, back you. Wasn't it you who kept saying that light can't catch up to a moving target? So yes, it is me. So this goes back to the guy's animation, so I guess we'll play that again. And it goes back to the stupid relativity conversation where I've pointed out that light can't have two momentums. And you people just don't understand. A photon can't move the speed of light in one direction and half the speed of light in another direction at the same time. Photons don't do that. If it's coming out sideways, yes, it was me. If the laser beam is directed at a moving mirror, it'd have to travel a longer distance and the mirror would move away in that time. Yes, that's what you kept saying. Yes. Where in the GIF, so this might be the GIFer, I don't know, is there any change in the speed of light? That's exactly my point. You don't change the speed. In a sense, you're not accounting for the fact that the light, when it actually has to travel somewhere where it can't cheat and just magically move sideways, the photon in air. So if I shoot light, I have a laser here, but if I shoot light, I might as well try to find a laser. Ooh, right next to the microphone. Sorry. Is it on? Oh, you can't see the beam anyway. So I could shoot it near you, maybe. I need smoke in the air. If I shoot a laser beam in the air, right, and my laser is moving, you don't have some expectation that the laser light moves sideways because the laser was moving. You kind of understand that each photon goes straight where it's released, and it doesn't keep going with the speed of the laser. It doesn't carry the laser's momentum. It can't have, it's not even that it can't carry it, it can't do that. It can't move the speed of light in one direction and half the speed of light in another direction. It can't do that. And the GIF doesn't account for that. Alright, so why don't you go ahead and show us where the deception is taking place? Well, sort of okay, so I guess we're doing that first. You can't and you won't because you're a sophomoric little turd. Spasmodic, okay, spasmodic, whatever. Fucky Yui, clearly E. So we'll go, the guy posted the link to his GIF again, so open it in a proper window, and we'll attempt, if we can, to move it, which we can't do, which is really irritating. Let's see, what can I do to fix it? Maybe if I make the screen smaller, I don't know. We'll see what that does. See if it pops it into full view. You still can't see the other side of it. Maybe I can move it over now. No, I'd have to, no, I still, yeah, okay, so the dead one is here now. You can barely see it, but it's there. Alright, so the point that this is the stationary example, and here's the moving example. Alright, I don't know if the mouse pointer's in the right location, but let's see. I guess if I move this mouse off, this one won't go far enough over. So, sorry, I can't get the mouse to cooperate. Try it on the image and see if we get any better luck. It's not animating. There it goes. As you can see, this photon, this one, isn't doing the triangle-y thing. It's going straight up and going sideways at the same time. It's going two different directions at the same time. And the example given was moving things half the speed of light. So you can imagine that it's going half the speed of light in this direction forward. At the same time it's going back and forth. And so that's the wrong part. If you made the photon go where it actually has to go, it would travel this line and it would fall short. It couldn't even hit the mirror at this location. It's not possible. The timing is wrong for it to hit the mirror at that point. So it couldn't even do it from the right location. It can only hit the mirror here, way over here. And that's the irony of this conversation. So I'll attempt to draw that. Okay, so we'll fix this window first. Or try to. And just so everything doesn't look like shit later. Or complete shit later. Or whatever. Some form of shit later. So the comments will look okay. We'll check that and then we'll go to the drawing. Yeah, that's close enough. Alright, so to the drawing table thingy. Alright, so this old drawing of mine was actually a little bit incorrect. So I was saying, it's probably still on here somewhere. Yeah, I said doesn't equal, right? This doesn't equal this, and technically it should equal this. And so I was disturbed by that, and I paused and said, blah, 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 blah. That's not, well, it is 1.38, and 2 times that is, and I was like, okay, there must be something wrong. I wasn't realizing. And yeah, there was something I wasn't realizing, so I'll redraw it and show the problem. And then this is where you get into some paradoxes. Some things that seem paradoxical anyway. So it seems paradoxical. And my light's getting dull, I guess, because there's a big shadow. I just put batteries in there. I can't make it any brighter, so it'll have to do. I have made it closer, so at least it should be a little better. I mean, it should be a little clearer. So let me just understand where I can draw this without getting into trouble. So I'm going to way up here. Oh, okay. Alright, so now we're doing the, we have the one trip going this way, and we figured out that's 10 point, what the hell was the number? Alright, 10 3/4, something like that. Close enough. Estimate of the round trip. Okay, so it takes longer to go one way, shorter to come back the other way. So now we're doing this trip. Alright, so the trick is, so we'll just mark off 4 units here to get an idea of what we're talking about. And so when I talked to the guy sitting next to me, so this was going to a guy across the table in the direction of the motion. So this whole thing is moving this way. Barely in the screen, but close enough maybe. Alright, and so we'll move this down a little. Alright, so we're going, this whole thing is moving this way. So when the light leaves, or we're saying this is sound, but it doesn't really matter. Just anything moving at constant speed, and we said it's going half the speed of light for the example. So that's just the context. And I guess we'll put some marks here to indicate heights and such. Alright, so the argument is, first thing I'll say is that you can sort of understand that anything, whether it's light or sound or whatever, it's going to do this, the circle thing. Okay, it's going to be, so we'll put them, try to put them at the marks of the distance thing. So you can sort of understand that it comes off straight in those lines, so it radiates that way. So the stationary would be, yeah, okay, you just talk and it goes right to him, and then he just talks back and it goes right back to you, and there's no problem. But obviously, when the sound leaves, this guy's going to start moving this way. And at half the speed of light, he would move, for these 4 notches, he would move 2 up. Now, the problem is that at the speed of light, 2 up, to get to that point, would be here at the speed of light. A photon, this is where a photon would end up. See, in the animation, what they're doing is they're taking this speed of light and invisibly, without you seeing it, so they move it this way and then back, but they're also moving it this way for free. They don't show you that they're for free moving it this way and then back. So they're moving it 2 directions. They're moving the photon 2 directions, when the truth is the photon has to follow this path, this arc. So you see that at 4 notches worth of distance, you know, it doesn't get to the guy I'm talking to. He still hasn't reached him. So it's just like the problem we had when this thing went 8 full notches. At half the speed of light, it went 8. If people remember that. It was twice as far. The distance was made twice as big by going half the speed of light. Well, the same problem happens here. You can't reach it, so you have to go another notch. When you go another notch, it goes another notch. And so what you end up doing is going some 6 point something notches. I think it turned out to be 5 and 3/8. 5 and 3/8. That's where you'll actually get to the guy. So you have to go number 5, and you have to go number 6 before these 2 things can actually meet at a point. So they can't meet here. They can only technically actually hit the mirror when you go all the way up there. And so it's the same thing as the 8 thing, except it's not quite as big a number. And you can sort of understand that we're back to doing the Pythagorean thing, you know, and you end up with a, you know, if you did 4 here and you did 4 here, you know, that would be squared, it would be 16, and 16, and 16 plus 16 is 32, and so you're looking for something short of 32 would be something like the square root of 5 and 3/8. So that ends up sort of being your number, right? Yeah, that's the length of this line. So that's the actual distance you have to travel to get to the point where you hit point B. So this is point A. Point B moves. You can't get to it. And the only place you can get to it, where you actually the 2 things meet, like they had to meet in the other example, was by making a line 5 and 3/8, which ends up being the 2 point, whatever it was, 2 and 8, or 3/4, or whatever it was. What the hell was it? 1 and 3/8 was 6/4. That wouldn't make any sense. 3/4, yeah, 3/4. So your 2 and 3/4 number ends up being this thing took 2 and 3/4. So this ends up being the same as this for one trip. You haven't even made the return trip yet. So that's the trick. So this is one part of the trip. This is the return trip, is 2 and 3/4. The forward trip was 8. So you add those together, you get 10 and 3/4. You know, and then you divide that by 2, and you'll end up with this 5 and 3/4 number. You know, well, somewhere I lost a quarter or an eighth. No, you'll end up 5 and 3/8. As half of the 10 and 3/4. So now it matches. So the 2 trips will end up being just as long if you actually recognize that you can't make a photon move 2 directions at once. And the argument. So if you think of it as sound waves, you can sort of understand that yes, the sound wave would travel this direction. This is the wave. So if you thought of light like sound or sound like light, you'll get that, oh yes, sound doesn't move in two directions at once. It can only go by these rings, will dictate your path, your possible paths. And as pointed out, this path just ends up too short. It doesn't make it to the 4. See, it makes it to the 4 here. It doesn't. The arc, the 4 arc, is too short. It doesn't get to the thing. So that's a correction to what I did before, and it explains now these two things equal. So now they do equal each other. The trip home equals this trip. Either one of these trips is going to be essentially the same. But that's the problem. Yeah. So I don't know if I have to add anything to that. So it just explains why the standing experiment, if this wasn't moving, it would be 4. When it's moving, it's going to be 5 3/8. So, I hope you followed along. Yeah. Should be enough of that for now. It really is. I think that's it. Yeah, so that's not that much better focus, actually. Yeah, I don't know why it's a decent camera. I mean, it's a, whatever they're called, one of those stupid Logitechs. But it's, I'm doing it on a Linux, and so, don't have the same kind of resolution choices. So, just wish it was a little better, but good enough. It don't have to be good enough for now, so I find better. Alright, so back to the comments. And then, there's a lot of crap here to go over. The cowboy posted a video of an interferometer, and it just illustrates exactly the point I was making. And so I would play a clip from my video demonstrating it's exactly the point I've made in my video. Alright, let's get one thing straight with you. You seem to think that this entire talk is a debate where you can talk using thoughts formulated only halfway and expect others to realize that you're right. It isn't. No, well, you're expecting that I have to just take everything you say as, empirically, like somehow I did the experiment and I saw exactly how it works, and that's exactly the truth. That everything you say about what is done or what is interpreted or what you think happens exactly the way you say it, and yet you don't explain any of it. Again, this interferometer thing, don't tell me that people don't think there's some sort of interference thing happening somewhere, but they can't point out where it's happening. And it's going to be even less possible to point out where it's happening now that I've pointed out that you get exactly the same pattern without even letting the other leg in. So, I mean, you've got it so backwards. You just don't want to accept the fact that all these things you've taken for granted as being true have never really been analyzed. No one analyzed the single and double slit experiment. No one's even looked to point out how in photons the pattern isn't doing what it's supposed to do as the mass dictates. It's not making a nice subtle gradation between light and dark. It's not doing it. Where does anybody point that out? You just say, no, we know for sure what it is. And even though it doesn't agree with the mass has to be right. And that's all you keep saying. Alright. If the change in the pattern were due to divergence, moving the mirrors would cause the pattern to shrink, says you. The interesting thing about the pattern is the pattern is exactly the same no matter what you use. So you use a diffraction gradient, the pattern's the same. You use a beam splitter, the pattern's exactly the same. You use one of these kits like going to be shown in the Cowboys video. Exactly the same. You use a dirty piece of fucking glass, a stupid plain piece of slide glass with dirt on it. You get exactly the same pattern. So clearly the pattern has something to do with glass, and it doesn't have a damn thing to do with some shrinking pattern. It's not going to be shrunk, okay, because the glass produces exactly the same pattern no matter what you're using to create the diffraction. Alright. Mirror's move would cause the pattern to shrink. Well, it obviously shrinks in a sense that it cycles. That's called, in a sense, that's its shrinking. But anyway, without the inner rings collapsing into the center, that's obviously not the case. So again, you say that has to be. I say, where's your evidence that that has to be the truth? That the pattern has to get smaller when you're not changing the distance between the dirt and the back layer of the glass. I mean, quite obviously, if there's dirt on this side of the glass, I'm not changing the distance between the dirt and this back layer of the glass, am I? So you could make the argument, if I made the glass really thick, then I might be able to change the pattern size. But that's the only way I can change it, is I'd have to make the glass thicker. Okay. If this were a matter of pattern created at the beam splitter, which I think is clearly obvious, there would be no need for mirrors. And as I pointed out, there almost isn't. I mean, the only thing the mirrors do is provide the distance necessary to make the pattern visible, big enough. And if it were created at the mirrors, there would be no need for the beam splitters. Well, it's not created at the mirrors. The mirrors only, in a sense, provide you the opportunity to magnify the size. In any case, you wouldn't even need to align the beams carefully, because as you already showed, you'd have two sets of rings already. Yeah, a weak set and a strong set is the tricky part of that, though. You know. But yes, as I've already shown, the rings don't need the second beam of light. You still haven't explained where your interference is happening. But even more obviously, if you had two sets of rings when moving one of the mirrors, then moving one of the mirrors would cause one set of rings to fill in the dark fringes of the other set of rings. Well, not if the two sets of rings are of different intensities. So that would be one explanation. But yeah, I haven't, I have to do the experiment again to see if I can get something that actually creates that phenomenon. But regardless, the point is that it's already doing everything the pattern does without the other path being involved at all. So I'm still saying, where are you saying this happens? If you want to know whether interference is the cause of two photons interfering with each other, or whether it is the case of a single photon interfering, so it's a thing where if I want to know, the fact that you're not curious is the funny part, is the hilarious part. You're claiming this experiment can tell us everything. It can tell us that relativity is true, and it can measure ether, and it can measure gravity waves, and it can do all kinds of magical things. And you're not even curious how the interference is created. And that maybe it's also doing something that no other experiment's been able to do, which is make two different photons interfere with each other. You don't have any other experiment where two different photons interfere with each other. Because in all the slit experiments, it's the single photons that are interfering with their own wave functions, duplications of themselves, wave packets, of themselves. So you don't have any evidence anywhere else of two different photons interfering with each other. And you're not even mentioning that as one of the wonderful miracle things this experiment proves, is that you can make a photon interfere with a different photon. You're such cunts. I suggest you pick up a fucking quantum optics textbook and read. Yeah, what? So I can learn the wrong way, as you have, quite obviously, and learn not to be curious at all? What do you think is going to be in the textbook? Why don't you make a quote from the textbook? Why don't you pick it up if you have the book, and you're such an authority on how good the book is? Why don't you quote a paragraph from the fucking book, cunt? You can't do that? You can't manage to find one really cool paragraph in your fucking quantum textbook that you can post here in your comment? Why don't you just post me a few paragraphs, for fuck's sake? Post me a few really great paragraphs from your fucking quantum book, jackass. Ones that are just totally indestructible. They're so perfect and so perfectly stated. Why don't you do that, fuckhead? Anyway, you dim-witted... Your dim-witted question can easily be answered midway. Well, why don't you answer it then? I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you answer it. What do you think the answer is? You think that it's a single photon wave packaging, or the single photon splits in two? One photon goes to the right, the other photon goes ahead. The other waveton, the other wave packet. So it splits into two wave packets. One wave packet goes this way. One wave packet goes this way. They come back. They combine back into a real photon and create a pattern. Is that your fucking answer, shithead? Your delusion? That's not going to happen, though, so we know you're going to keep saying no one has the answer. I'm going to keep saying, why don't you provide it? You say your magical book has the answer? That's like some asshole Christian saying, well, you need to read the Bible to understand my proof. What do you mean? I've read it. It's a piece of shit. Your Bible doesn't have any answers in it. Fuck you. So yeah, post your fucking dogma. Let me post more of your crap science, okay? Because I've already played the quotes from your lecturers. I've already played the quotes from your fucking MIT physicist and your Yale physicist and Feynman and the rest of them, and they can't describe the simplest experiments in the universe. Really simple ones, just two fucking holes in a piece of paper or something. And they can't even explain what happens in that experiment without cheating. Without pretending, oh, all the photons just lump over there, and then oh, there's lump over there. When we already know that doesn't happen. Newton already knew that didn't happen. I mean, you're such a cunt. Again, this fucking dirt on the glass thing was figured out 200 fucking years ago. They figured this out. And you people don't, you people were clueless. There was nothing in your books about it. Jackass. Alright, Peter Tomlinson. So, yeah, a very nice French-Swiss guy. I haven't heard from a while. Broke his collarbone, really had a shitty year last year. So, hope it's a much better year. Anyway, I think you made a mistake. Knowing that photons are particles and sound is a wave traveling through transmission medium. Yeah, well, I'm just using it as an example of something moving at a constant speed, and we're just, using it for the purpose of... And I said, sort of in the video, that you kind of have to imagine that you have to take the air, you have to make it free air, so it's like a flat car. So yeah, you get the idea of the wind is making things, fucked up. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the idea can be understood without being too technical about how fast air moves in different dense mediums, because obviously air pressure creates more density, which means the sound moves slower, blah, 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 blah. If the air doesn't move between the two persons in the train, no difference in time needed for the sound to go from person A to person B. Well, again, the air is moving is my point. I basically said, look, just pretend the air is free air, not confined air. The air is not moving with the experiment. All right. But I appreciate your point. It's, but it's a little bit too. It's not like it's a nitpick. I'm just saying it's just a little, Alright, so this John Walker guy, so JW, so that's why I accused you of being John Wayne. It just is a coincidence you're using this, because he did a lot of use of the reversing John Wayne thing, made a lot of fake names involving J and W. So anyway, he's the one who posted the stupid crap about the high school, which, yes, I'm just saying it's just really dumb thing to do in the context of this channel and history of the saboteurs and the crazy fucks that wish to attack me in a personal way. So it was kind of a indelicate thing to play with. Anyway, there's one thing that both Ken and yourself, it's a Ken comment on, well, I'm here, I might as well do it. Ken and yourself share is that you both think you're so clever and that you can answer anything with science. Ken doesn't really believe in science, so I mean that's just silly. All these meaningless equations. Show me the equation that explains what a bird is, or make it simpler, a bacteria. So you don't think there's the DNA code is effectively an equation. It's meticulously, the little chemical bits meticulously bounce in specific ways along the code. That's what it is. The DNA molecule is a punch card. It's like the old kind of computers that had a bunch of holes in it. The DNA code's doing exactly the same thing, jackass. The formula's all over the DNA. And it's really dumb that you're too stupid to figure that out. Dismiss God as the scientist. So God had to use punch cards? God has to use punch cards to make organisms? Why does he have to do that? Why doesn't he just poof everything? He's such a great poofer. And he poofed, you know, the AIDS virus. Fuck you, cunt. Die. I hope your God kills you soon. You stupid piece of shit. Oh, these God bothers are just so retarded. I hope he kills you really hard and nasty, because he, you know, God loves your suffering. So I hope he suffers you good. It is difficult to get the man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. You know, again, that's another. I don't think we have to worry about people's motives behind any of this shit beyond the fact that they're devoted. You know, to say God's paying them to be devoted, I don't know. You know, clearly the big name scientists have that problem, in my opinion. Alright, this John Wayne fellow has a video. So this is the stupid, whatever, Delta Nor guy, who I think posted another couple of crappy comments. I think I deleted and saved. So I'll play those, but we might as well do the John Wayne bullshit first. So I'll get rid of this crappy GIF thing. Alright, so this is the John Wayne video. And it is a curious thing on these interferometers, you know, because I have, you know, I look at the related videos, and once in a while you see something that looks, oh yeah, that's going to be a really good one. And it's all these Indian guys, and nothing against guys from India, but you can't understand what the fuck they're saying. Their English is so bad. It's like their English might be good, but the way they speak it is so bad. You know, it is so, it's not even like it's broken English, but, you know, their accents are so bizarre that you can't tell what the fuck they're saying. And but they're really, it seems like India loves interferometers. I mean, they're just, it's like on every single interferometer video now is an Indian guy. Well, the good news is this guy is actually, you can hear what he's saying, so this is a good one. So anyway, we'll just play some of this.
Causing a path difference between the two mirrors, which of course would affect the interference pattern.
Of course.
Using a micron.
So it's always saying, of course, of course. So they're using a micrometer. It's only a 10-to-1 ratio, which I was surprised because, see, these people think they're moving through the wavelengths of light. So it's like 1,000,000 nanometers in a millimeter. Might even be more, but let's just say it's 1,000,000. It's a lot. And they think when they're moving this little millimeter thingy, and even if you multiply it by 10, that they're somehow changing phases between beams of light. That is, they're moving things 700 nanometers, you know, out of phase with each other. So they're moving something 700 nanometers, something that small, with this micrometer. I mean, that can't be happening. Just realistically, it can't.
To vary the position of one of the mirrors, keeping in mind that as I change the position by 0.01 millimeter, the mirror moves by 0.001 millimeters.
Right, and you're still 0.0001 off of moving nanometers distance.
Due to, in our case, a level reduction factor of 10.
Of 10, yeah, there it is, 10. Well, 10 isn't going to get it you there. You need a multiplication of 1,000.
So, in the following video, as I increase the distance of one of the mirrors, the pattern seemed as if it was collapsing.
Yes.
As you see in the video here.
Yes. It's going to turn it the other way eventually. I guess I should have sped it up.
But now, if I reversed the motion of the micrometer screw, the pattern seems as if it was expanding, of course.
Right. Now, so what is this post for? What purpose is this? Again, so he says, re-up, M physicist demonstrates IRL, the fake, phony properties of interferometry. So these are, somehow this is a counter argument to what I'm arguing. Like somehow I'm saying this doesn't happen, when I'm saying, no, this happens, and it happens without you even having to have a whole interferometer. You only need a half of an interferometer, and you can get exactly the same thing to happen. So back to my video. So you can see the pattern, not quite as obvious. Hopefully you can see that. Make sure this video is mostly in there. Yeah, it's mostly in there. You can see most of it. So you can see that same exact pattern. So it's exactly the same pattern, and this is done with just a plain piece of dirty glass. So there's no beam splitter. I haven't even allowed the second beam to come bounce back. There's no mirror bouncing the other beam back. It's just one direction of the interferometer, one leg of the interferometer with a plain piece of glass. The matrix of the glass molecules that's actually creating the pattern. So I was just pointing out that it's, it can be the only explanation for why the pattern is always the same no matter what the dirty medium is. So no matter what you use to diffract the light, you get exactly the same configuration of pattern. So that the pattern has to do something with how glass reflects light. It can't have anything to do with the actual diffraction itself. It has to be being amplified by the glass. And we'll probably and not interference. So this will take drawings, and I'll read his comments and play this video. And again, understand the context. I've played the other guy's video, the other physics professor who was doing the optical part and explaining how you get the pattern with just two pieces of glass, and explaining internal reflections. And nowhere in that conversation was any Huygens or any magical mechanisms, even though you might believe in some. There was none in the explanation. Video basically just illustrates that you can make the pattern go away. Alright, if you have to really, the porch is cold, and so condensation is a real problem. So, to keep the pattern really weak, I had to keep cleaning the glass, making sure it was perfect. So you can see it there cycling, and that's just from tilting the can a tiny bit. You can see how it cycles, the reflecting, the mirror. So I'm just affecting the mirror a little bit, put a little tiny twist, and you get a pretty dramatic cycling of the, the point is I don't have a micrometer. I didn't have some way to move the thing gracefully in and out, so I just tilted it because it was easier to tilt than it was to move. Clean, and it's bad glass anyway, but you can already see the pattern is weaker than it was before. This part I'm just illustrating that you can see the pattern goes from left to right and up and down. The pattern changes from going in to going out. So left, it goes out. Turn it right, it goes in. Tilt it up. So you did see that, right? I mean, there's no doubt about what you just saw there, right? There's no doubt about, you can see this, right? It's not as bright as the other guy's image, but you can see how perfect this is. The rings go out to like 50 rings. I mean, it's a really clear, sorry about the spot, but that was just to get rid of the bright spot from, that's also shooting way over here, actually. Because it's the two types of diffraction and whatever, so one of the beams ends up not centered on the other beam. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that shit. But clearly, so what's this preaching about? I'm pointing out how I don't even need a complete interferometer to make a perfectly perfect pattern that cycles. So all the components are there, and there's no second arm. So if you think the photons have to have their wave function split in two and travel two different paths and come back from two different paths at different have have their phase interrupted to create the interference because their phase is off, and that's creating the interference, right? That's your theory. Well, I'm saying your theory doesn't work here. There has to be some other explanation for where the interference is happening, because there's no here. You know, you can't make your argument and be able to explain why this happens. There's no two photons here. It goes in, tilted down, it goes out. So that's just a fact. I don't know what exactly it means, but it certainly indicates that this has something to do with the angle of the light reflecting inside of the glass, and not something to do with particles. If it was just the particles creating the pattern, going left to right really shouldn't make any difference, I don't think, logically. So anyway, continuing. So I was trying here to just, clean the two pieces of glass as best I could to try to get the pattern to become as minimal as possible. And you can see it's, in some circumstances, it gets pretty faded. So the idea is that if you have the glass perfectly clean, no dust or moisture or anything to create surfaces that the light can be diffracted by, then there's no diffraction, there's no spreading, or very little light gets spread, and therefore there can't be a pattern because no light spread. So without the divergence, there can't be a pattern. Pretty much seems reasonable. So here I'm cleaning it, you can see, and so it just changes things in weird ways. So this square artifact is, I think, something from the laser beam itself. So that's an image of something within the laser beam that's created that kind of strange pattern. And you can see as it warms up or cools down or whatever it's doing, the pattern does get more intense or less intense. And so now I'm going to spray moisture on the beam itself, and I couldn't create much of a difference in anything by doing that, but theoretically that's supposed to also. Okay, so I guess there's no point in playing my own video over again. But apparently there's just no will to listen to anything, that I've pointed out. Like I said, I've been nagged by people about doing this, doing that. I do the fucking experiment, I demonstrate it, and then this idiot posts a video that is in no way informative. We already know what happens here. I'm pointing out how exactly the same thing happens here. So, how are you people being fair to the points I've made? You're not addressing any of them. You're just pretending I haven't pointed this out, how I haven't illustrated it clearly with an experiment. You're just pretending it didn't happen. Well, it did happen. And you've got something to account for, and you're not accounting for any of it. You're just giving me your dogma. Well, your dogma isn't going to work. It's not a rational response. Alright, so I don't think we need that anymore, but I'll just go back to the comments. Alright, so this is the good comment the guy did with the 4 tiles that provoked me to recognize that the other leg is significant. So I've already explained that, so I think we're done. So I'll just find the crappy comments by the other shithead that I deleted appropriately, in my opinion. Let's see, did you notice that the up-down photon on the top took longer time to get to the target than the photon on the bottom? So again, he's back at that animation. The movement of the tons has been mathematically put into the GIF. It's the animation. It's a mathematical. It's not moving any real speeds. It's obviously not moving the speed of light, right? It's moving a percentage, and a percentage based on what your model is attempting to illustrate. And I'm just saying clearly, did you notice that the photon is moving in 2 directions? The one that's going up and down, the one that's not moving in the direction. That photon is moving in 2 directions at the same time. Did you notice that? Fuckhead. Anyway, maybe if you had a few more scruples, you could have noticed that this discrepancy indicated that the upper photons vertical velocity is compensated to move at a constant speed of light? Well, again, constant speed of light in one direction and half the speed of light in this direction. So you've contrived a non-real photon that's able to move this way the speed of light and this way half the speed of light. Did you notice that that's probably not physically possible, fuckface? Alright, you're just making bold claims and speaking incoherent gibberish. So exactly my accusation to you, and you're doing it in defense of something as silly as Catholic dogma, as far as I'm concerned. You're just a Pope dickligger. Dickligger? Yeah. Now that this is put up here, anyone can decompose it into separate frames. And again, for what purpose? It's not, you're not taking a videotape of a rat in a maze or something. It's a contrived piece of crap. Alright? I told you, show me the algorithm. Show me where they mathematically recognized that if you go this angle, alright, you can't get to the same height as this. See, it doesn't make it. See, it doesn't reach it. See? See, it comes up short in reality. See? Shithead? Short. Like your little penis. Short. Fucking jackass. Actually compare the positions on the average would be required since the image is pixelated. And apply... So he keeps saying, oh, well, yeah, put a protractor on my animated image that's a synthetically produced by the math I think is correct. That doesn't have anything to do with photons not being able to move two directions at the same time. Because I think they can. I dare you to compare the distances on average. I dare you to be rational enough for a minute to recognize that your animation isn't reality. That it's not an experiment. Shit. Okay. If the rings came out from the beam splitter only, then the pattern would be two rings superimposed on top of each other. And I would argue that that may well be a possibility, because the two patterns are of completely different brightnesses. So who knows? But anyway, so when one of the arms is moved, one set of rings would fill the dark fringes of the other set. But that's clearly not what's happening. Well, you're saying everything's clear, and you're convinced. And again, I'll argue that you still haven't figured out whether they're single photons that are doing this interfering. You haven't given me an answer to that question. You still haven't explained exactly how the actual, where the interference actually happens. Show me. You know, put a circle around it somewhere you think there's interference happening. All right. It is hard to imagine anyone could ever, and the interference is supposed to be created at the point where the rings are created, right? I mean, you can't say the interference happens after the rings are created, can you? Is that reasonable to say? So if I demonstrate that the rings are created on the first length, going through the first beam splitter, going right through it, that you already created a ring pattern, if I can it demonstrates that, then how can you say the interference happened in the last leg, when I can demonstrate that it happened somewhere in the first leg? Anyway, it is hard to imagine anyone could ever even be so far up their own ass that they don't realize this. So realize, again, one set of rings would fill the dark fringes of the other set. Again, a claim you're making. Alright. You haven't touched a single beam splitter in your entire life. So this is a beam splitter. There's a piece of diffracting film between two pieces of glass. That's a beam splitter. But as clearly as pointed out, a plain piece of glass is a beam splitter. 50-50, exactly. So what do you think a beam splitter is supposed to be? What's your technical definition of what a beam splitter is supposed to do? If I create something that splits the light 50-50, that is 50% of the light reflects and 50% of the light goes through, isn't that a beam splitter? Why is that not technically an acceptable beam splitter, if that's exactly what it does? 50% goes through, 50% reflects off. How is that doesn't fit the definition of a beam splitter? And I've held all these different ones right in front of this fucking camera, and you're saying I haven't touched one? What's one? What's the special ingredient in your beam splitter, the one you would choose to use? Alright, it's hard to imagine anyone could. Anyway, you haven't touched a single beam splitter in your life, which is just a joke, and yet you're going to lecture everyone about things you barely understand. And what was the component of my lecture? My lecture was demonstrating an actual physical experiment that with actual physical results, not a fake animation of what I believe to be true. No, the actual experiment, actually done with actual laser beam and actual beam splitter. You fucking asshole. They don't create diffraction rings. So he says the beam splitter doesn't create the rings. Well, that was all that was on my porch, was the beam splitter, a layer of dirt on the glass. So a plain piece of glass with some dirt on it. Okay, and I created the pattern. That's all I had, a plain piece of glass with some dirt on it. You saw the pattern, it's the interferometer pattern, it cycles, it does it all, and that's all it was, shithead. So you're making a claim that there's the evidence, in my opinion, you're dead in the water on the claim. Because clearly the beam splitter's creating the pattern. Alright. And you should do well to shut your mouth about things that you have wrong conceptions of. And you're the one who has no conception. You're not curious how the fucking thing actually works. You'll just accept the lie. Just like with the single slit experiment doesn't create 50 bars. Just as the bars created aren't bars of light. No, they're really somehow a smooth gradation between light and dark. Just as when you, and the single slit, when I expand the image, how come they're all saucer, flying saucer shaped? Why does that happen? Do you have some explanation for any of these phenomenon? No explanations whatsoever. You're totally not curious. So if somebody asked you, where's Cain's wife? You don't care. I'm not curious. That doesn't mean anything. How did Noah live to be 800 years old and only have 8 kids? I don't know. It's the way it was, People didn't care about having sex much back then. You did it for like 20 years, 25, and then you said, fuck it, now I'm not going to do it for the other 775 years. I'm not going to get laid. I mean, what are you, retarded? Fuck you, cunt. If there's anything else. It really is interesting to wonder how you can go so far and continue his denial of math and pictures, cloaked in the form of such asinine argumentation. Right, so again, the argument's presented, you just ignore it, you just keep playing your propaganda videos. Look, I'm turning my micrometer and the pattern's changing. I'm changing the wavelength of the light. I'm moving things 50 nanometers. Yeah, I'm moving things 1/1,000,000th of a millimeter. The dude is not just a pathetic idiot. Yeah, well, whatever. Dude, fuck you. Feel dead. Get what you deserve, dude. The math doesn't even have any non-trivial premises. Well, whatever that means. It doesn't have any non-trivial premises. That's what it's lacking, actually. You're lacking the integral, where you increase the distance as the experiment progresses. And then in the back leg, you decrease the distance as the experiment progresses. You're lacking that non-trivial bit of complication that's the actual truth, that actually is affecting the results, shithead. Instead you just put your little fucking L and say, there, I'm done. Well, it's not an L kind of experiment, jackass. And it's been laid out exactly how to derive everything. Why do I need, again, this whole hilarious part of the derived part, right? They have a simple equation, right? L over C minus V, and then L over equals right? L over C plus V, no, plus those two things together, and that'll equal your result. Well, you know what L is, you know what C is, and you know what V is. So why don't you just fill in all the numbers right there? Why do you need a derivative? Why do you need to derive an equation that already says 2 plus 2 equals 4? Why do you need to do that? Why would I say, oh, so I have x plus y equals 4, right? And I already know that x is 2 and y is 2. But I'll pretend I don't, so I can make x and y not equal 4. And that's what your derivative did. You changed something where you already had the right answer, okay, and you decided, because it would be C minus V, C plus V would be C. It would be the minus V and the plus V would cancel out the end. You're done. That one equals the other. So, as written, the equation basically said, yes, the two things are equal. And they had to fuck the equation up to make them unequal. Man, scum. You could have noticed that this discrepancy indicated, let's see if there was something I missed. Did you notice the time you get the target? It seems different. Which one was I reading? Did you notice that the up-down photon on the top took longer? Maybe you had a few more scruples. Yeah, I did that one. Okay. Non-trivial premises. That has been laid out exactly how you derive everything. Yet, he will still claim that this denial of basic reality, yet he will still claim that this denial of basic reality is him attacking flawed premises. So by claiming that you quite obviously have a flawed formula, by pointing out that you have all the variables, you could solve your own formula, and you don't, and somehow when you derived it, the answer you would have got if you just got the answer isn't going to be the same as the answer after you derived it, that's a problem, asshole. That if your derived equation doesn't come up with the same answer as the one you solved, then that's called a problem. Houston, we have a problem with our formula. I wonder if he even understands his own bullshit he spouts. Well, at least I'm smart enough to recognize something that's insanely stupid, which is you already know that 2 plus 2 does equal 4, and that your derivative changing that answer has to be pretty much fucking retarded. Okay, but we'll never know that, since that would require him to focus. Yeah, well, whatever. Fuck you, you Borgie piece of shit. Nothing else to say. Fuck off, asshole. You're done. You've been cooked thoroughly. Again, show me the algorithm for your GIF. Show me the mathematics that created it, and I'll show you where you gave the photons 2 speeds. Half the speed of light this way, speed of light that way. And they don't do that, asshole. Alright. No, I think I'm done now. Can't do anything from there. Ah, that's the place I need to go. Alright, so I think I've done everything I needed to take care of here. I don't think there's anything else reasonable. See if there's any new comments, but it doesn't matter. And yeah, the only thing I wanted to check, I guess we could see if John the fucking Wayne has any other stupid videos. We'll have an asshole sit there and bother listening to him. Oh, subjective morality, that ought to be really interesting. Got a statue in there. I don't know what that's exactly about. Kind of creepy. So it's only showing 3 videos here. So I've already, the perpetual motion, oh, so he deleted his other video. Oh. Well, it's the right thing to do because it was rubbish. So, whatever. No point. No point. Too stupid. Alright, so yeah, we're done. And such. So if anybody can find any really good lectures online, spoken in listenable English, that get to the heart of actually how the interference pattern is created in the interferometer, not just doing the, yes, the light does this and it does that, getting to something real. How exactly the beam splitter creates the pattern. I'd be interested. But I think my videos are the best ones on the subject. Because this really is about internal reflections in thin mediums. Alright, so enough said. Till next time and such.